Welcome to GatherGeeks by BizBash. I'm David Adler, and before we start, I want to introduce you to one of our fantastic sponsors, Skipster. They are the guest management platform used by top event teams for everything from guest lists to seating charts and online invitations. If you're looking for the next generation event software that helps deliver the perfect guest experience, head over to Skipster's website. It's spelled ZKIPSTER.com to try a free event.
Are you a follower? 10, 9, 8, okay, so we're gonna be
Welcome to GatherGeeks, a podcast by BizBash, the place where people passionate about meetings and events come together. Here are your hosts, BizBash CEO David Adler and Editor-in-Chief Beth Kormanik.
Hi, David.
Hey, Beth. Here we are, another GatherGeek.
Today our guest is Debbie Geller, founder of Geller Events. She's a Los Angeles-based event planner who is known in particular for weddings and social celebrations. She's experienced in destination events and can execute modern, romantic, elegant, or other concepts or some combination of the above. David, tell us what you think of when you think of Debbie's work and her philosophy of events.
Well, I saw Debbie speak at Engage several times, and she comes off as really one of the smartest people in our business, and she gives the old idea of party planning a good name in a sense. She is always purposeful in everything she does, and she also deals with some of the biggest egos on the planet. And if she knows how to do that and handle them with aplomb, I think it's a big congratulatory message to her.
She's going to discuss how she conceives an event's flow, how to think on the fly, maintaining client relationships, and maybe the most difficult of all, how to convince guests to give up their cell phones. Yeah, no, she really understands how to create these, I call them intentional human moments that are totally planned. At the same time, she's really good at making it feel like it's on the fly. Let's take a listen.
How do you view, what is your philosophy on first impressions? And it sort of goes deeper than that because it sort of is a way to think about how you think about events.
We are fortunate enough to design in a marketplace where people have seen and experienced everything. And so for us, first impressions means seeing or experiencing something that they never have before and taking people out of their comfort zone a bit.
And what is that? How do you edit that down to the point where, how do you know that no one's ever seen it before? And how do you really have to be on top of your game in order to know this.
You do. You have to design from within yourself and use a lot of inspiration other than what you're finding on Pinterest and Instagram and those things. Basically, if we've seen it before, it's not going to achieve that. But it can also be done in other ways. For example, designing with all 5 of your senses and adding other senses as well.
Okay,
so
go deeper than that, other senses as well. Because you have 5 senses. What are these other senses?
You can talk about your sense of scale, your sense of space.
Okay.
So, for example, if you're in a very small room and you design something oversized, that's going to make you feel a certain way, as opposed to being in a very grand space and designing at the same scale. So all of those things get your clients to just feel a bit differently than they did when they walked in. And in terms of designing with all of your senses, we did an event in Toronto years ago that the first thing we did was had a canopy that guests walked into before they went into the main tent that smelled like a pina colada. And we had designed an event where they were being transported to the Caribbean. And before they saw the palm trees, before they saw the Caribbean-style buildings that we had built inside the tent to transport them, the first thing they did was their sense of smell. And it's important to us that an event is revealed in layers. If you walk into the room and everything that's exciting hits you all at once, in my mind, that's a fail. You should have a wow, and then through your entertainment, through the decor at the tables and the smaller touches, it should go from your sort of biggest thing that they're experiencing to the smallest details. It should reveal itself in little bits and pieces. So whether it's a surprise in a course of food, or a surprise entertainer that comes on, or a lighting change in the room, you need to keep wowing them. First impressions need to be bold enough to let them know that there are going to be more impressions.
And how do you make it so that that first impression does signal that there'll be more? Like, what does that first impression feel like? I mean, you talked about sense of smell and things like that. Is there a rule that you have about that first impression?
There's not a specific rule.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say it's like porn. You can't define it, but you know it when you see it.
Okay.
I know you caught me off guard with that one. I don't know how to put that into words.
That's great.
But we've all experienced when you walk into some place and you're speechless for a minute.
Okay.
Or you walk in and you just think, wow, this wasn't what I expected. And some of that happens, and we all do it in our markets, where there are certain hotels or certain properties that you work in all the time. And people go to those locations thinking they know what their expectations are going to be. And when you walk in and it's not at all the norm, that's how you achieve that.
And do you have it? How do you program the next one? Like, how long do you wait? What is your sort of methodology on the future impressions that you're getting?
From entertainment perspective, it happens throughout the evening that you want to have a certain feeling for the guests during cocktails. Where for us, we like to have a style of music or entertainment where they're moving, where they know it's going to be a party, where it's a high energy, but not provoking them to dance or promoting them to dance. During dinner, we like that entertainment to be quiet enough that they can have a conversation. And then after dinner, at the end of the meal, we want to surprise them. We want to wake them up.
So when you do your planning...
So that's where that wow would come then.
When you do your planning then, is it all programmed in? I mean, Brian Raffinelli says there's never anything by accident with Brian Raffinelli. I'm assuming you're the same way.
You know, I love Brian. I'm going to disagree with that.
Oh, interesting. Okay, we love it.
We plan it.
Yeah.
We plan it, and then we plan to throw out our plans.
Uh-huh.
So we literally tell our clients and our event partners that when we give you a schedule, that's going to become a sequence of events and not a timeline of events, because I believe that if you schedule that too tightly, you're not letting room for the magic to come in. So if there's something that happens that's not part of our schedule that is fabulous, we're going to adjust our schedule to go with that.
And are you in some sort of, like, even though you're not necessarily in a control room, you're kind of like pulling the strings in some way, right?
Oh, 100%.
And how do you do that? Are you on a
There
headset?
is no control room. We're in the room to
Right.
sort of feel the vibe and feel the energy and see what's happening.
Right. But how do you communicate to everybody when you're in that room situation? Are you just with your team, or are you just sort of like, you see it happening and you say, oh my God, let this go?
It depends on the location. So if we're on a larger scale event, we have, earpieces, and I can literally go to channel 2 to talk to lighting, channel 3 to talk to sound,
Uh-huh.
channel 1 to talk to my team. If it's a smaller event, you just walk across the room.
Right,
and
right.
the way that we implement our schedules is everybody knows that even if it's 8:32, they're not going to do what it says on the schedule at 8:32 until they hear from myself or my associate Paige.
Right. So you're directing.
We are directing.
You're like using the movie, sort of the movie business analogy then in this.
Yeah, we are 100% directing.
And is that different?
Yeah, because if you've got a full dance
Yeah.
floor and everybody's having a blast and it's before a cold course of food,
Uh-huh.
we may push that 10 minutes.
Yeah.
If it's a hot course of food, obviously we want everything to be perfect, so we're going to keep it. But we do read the energy of a room a lot and adjust what we're doing based on what's happening in the room.
What happens in the negative side? What happens when you come to, and we've all been there, and it looks like, oh my God, these people are not connecting. Do you pull a new trick out of your bag, or do you just go with the plan?
No, you try to pull a new trick. What we do on weddings especially is we will adjust our schedule. So, for example, there are certain things, and these are not big secrets. Everybody uses it. You use a father-daughter dance to get people on the dance floor, some of these other things. So we will sometimes say, you know what, we feel like we need to get people up dancing. We're going to move this speech, and we're going to use a vehicle that we have right now to get people up dancing. The other things that I tell my clients are some clients are very heavy-handed in doing their lists of music that they want the band to play. And we always tell them from the beginning two things. Number one, don't give us music you want to listen to in your car. Give us music that will get you out of your chair. And two, if the crowd is not responding to your requests, we reserve the right to change those requests. Because the bottom line is, come Monday morning, you're not going to remember what song the band played. You're going to remember if everyone had a good time.
Right, but what happens?
So we talk to our clients about that in advance.
Yeah.
And if we need to change things up, we will change things up.
And I would assume that you're going to be fairly, if it's not working the way the host and hostess or the bride and the groom, that you're going to sort of take command?
We will take command. My experience, and I've been doing this, 24 years now, is that it generally does work the way the bride and groom expected it. And what I mean by that is, if the bride and groom are big dancers and big party people and they're in the middle of the crowd getting things going, it's going to work. Mm-hmm. If the bride and groom from day one or the couple tells us, we're not really dancing people, we're going to design an evening that's maybe a multi-course meal with wine pairings and more speeches. So that's going to be taken into account from the beginning. Very rarely have I seen it where they say, we are big party people and we're going to be on the dance floor, and nobody joins them.
Right. It's the personality. Well, let's bring that into the corporate side a little bit. My feeling is that CEOs of companies are terrible hosts today, and that they almost need to be trained to, in a sense, get people onto the dance floor for whatever purpose that they're trying to create. How do you?
I agree with you.
Yeah.
I agree with you. And corporate parties are generally designed in a bit of a different way than social events.
Sure.
And when we do corporate events, it is usually because the clients want it to feel like a social event. And we do train our clients. We say they're going to take your lead. And even on things like moving people from one room to another, we will tell our clients in advance, if guests are just engaged in conversation and they're not moving, we may ask you to help us. Because by pulling those people out of the room or having the CEO or other people in a company say, come with me, everybody moves then.
Right.
So they are part of the team that evening, and we can ask them to get involved and literally say to people, they're going to take your lead. If you're seated in a chair, they're going to be seated in a chair.
And how does
if you're the center of the action,
Yep.
they're going to be the center of the action.
Planning an event and wondering how you can give your attendees the best experience possible? Take advantage of customized meetings with Hilton that make it easier than ever to incorporate health, wellness, and great breaks. Hilton will help you build an extraordinary meeting that attendees will remember. To book your next meeting or event, go to meetings.hilton.com. How does the difference between a social event and a corporate event in terms of first impressions? Is the strategy a little different, or is it the same?
I think the messaging is a little bit different. We try on our social events, whether it's a birthday party or a wedding or an anniversary, whatever it is, to have the personality of our client. And we're very low-key in the way that we present ourselves visually. A lot of people don't even realize that there's a coordinator involved. So for us, it's a success when people say, this event really felt like you, meaning our clients,
Right.
not us.
Right.
For a corporate event, it's more about messaging and branding. And when we make them feel like social events, it's a bit more subtle, but it's still, there's a message that you're trying to get across, and there is a brand in terms of your place in the marketplace that needs to be conveyed. So if you're working for a luxury company, that event needs to feel the level of the company, as opposed to the personality of a person.
But do the hosts make a big difference in a corporate event, or do you still need to have that participation of the host, or does the brand speak as the host?
The brand speaks as much. We need their help in engaging people and in moving the evening along, but their personality, unless they are the brand,
Yeah, of course,
is not so important.
But do people relate to a brand as much as they would relate to a person? Is that a bigger challenge for somebody that's designing an event?
I don't think it's a bigger challenge. I almost think it's easier because companies know who they are and people aren't always sure.
Right. So I guess the lesson is that
I don't think it's a bigger challenge, but I also think, in other words, when you're at a social event, relating to the client and having it feel like them is what makes it more intimate.
Mm-hmm.
You're not necessarily looking for that same closeness at a corporate event, but you still want it to speak to what the brand is because you're pushing that forward.
Well, you're trying to promote whatever the outcome, whether it's a sale or a relationship or whatever, that's a little bit different than in a social event. Are you seeing?
Yeah, in a social event, there's no end game except having a great time.
Exactly. Well, that end game builds sort of the Maya Angelou piece, in terms of people feel about how they're feeling about it. What is the responsibility of a good guest to react to the first impression, the second impression? Like, how are they supposed to? What do you see as how to be a good guest? It's an odd question, though.
To be a good guest, I think you need to be in the moment and take it all in. I think to be a good guest, you need to put your cell phone away.
Oh, okay.
I think you need to be in the moment and be swept up by it and go with the feelings and the emotions that the evening is presenting.
So it's interesting.
And I don't mean put your cell phone away, never take a photograph, but some people are, you see guests sitting at a table and they're on their cell phones.
Yeah. You want to like pull their hair out sometimes.
You want to be present. We did a birthday party, 2 years ago now, that we had a cell phone check, and every single person had to check their cell phone on the way in. They knew that this was in advance, and people who had children were given an emergency telephone number, this, that, and the other thing. You could get in touch with people, but everybody was resistant. And I can't tell you the number of people who walked out at the end of the night and said, I haven't had this much fun in years because I was present.
I totally agree with you on this, that it's, we're getting to be addicted to this stuff, but it doesn't make you present.
No, I think that your job as a guest is to be present.
That's probably the bumper sticker on this.
Yeah.
That's interesting. But the idea is but we want social. Is it better to create a social moment that allows people to pull out their phones and do something to amplify this? Because, the people are still looking at how many likes they get and how many pictures on Instagram and all that.
Look, you didn't ask me how to get them to put away their phones. You asked me how to be a good guest.
Yeah, okay, no, that's a good point.
They're never going to do it.
That's a good point.
They're never going to do it.
But designing events can change though based on that now. So you have to look for the Instagrammable moment too, right? Are you designing for that all the time?
You can definitely create Instagrammable moments, and we all do. But it means that they have a green light to use their social media at those moments. It doesn't mean they're going to stop it at the other ones.
Right. But are you thinking about it that way now when you design events, that you are creating either as soon as, like, I've had events where people come in the room and they're with their cameras to enter the room.
Yeah, no, definitely they do it.
And that's a good sign, I think.
Yeah,
right?
I think you are. I think that we're at a strange place in terms of all that, because we have certain clients that want the hashtag and want everybody on their phones when they come in and want to get buzz about their weddings and their events and all of those things. And I'm now seeing, in the last probably 6 months, we've had several clients that don't want a hashtag and don't want to promote any of that. And I think that it's coming full circle.
Yeah.
I don't think it's there yet.
Oh, no, I think we're in a post-digital age.
Yeah, I don't think people want to be a hostage to it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. So let me ask you also so we talked about first impressions. What now is the lasting impression that people want of their events?
I think that people want, obviously, for people to have a good time. That goes without saying.
Yes.
But I think that they want the warmth that comes from that feeling when the hosts are as concerned about their guests having a good time as they are about themselves. And that comes from really being courteous about your guests and thoughtful of their needs. So, for example, it is when somebody is gluten-free, a server coming to their table and saying, we're aware of your dietary restrictions, we've prepared a special menu for you, without you having to say something. It is to possibly something in their cars when they leave that is a reminder of the evening and makes you smile or laugh. For example, we did a party with a crazy dessert and candy room, and in their cars gave everybody a toothbrush. So it's something that says we're thinking about you, no matter how big or small that is.
Right.
That leaves people want to gossip, and people want to get up the next morning and say, oh my God, wasn't that over the top? Wasn't that this? Wasn't that that? You want to give them things to talk about that are positive.
And what are the kinds of things that I remember I always talk to my friends who say, what I did at my wedding 30 years ago, they're still talking about the same thing. There are things that just resonate with people, no matter who they are. The most famous people in the world, they're going to go back to that experience.
Yeah. And I think it comes down to, again, being thoughtful.
Yep.
We have had people that everybody does envelopes with seating cards. That's not a big deal. But we've had people put in a personalized note to each guest in their envelopes.
Wow.
That just says, thank you for being here. I remember when I met you, whatever it is. It's a big commitment.
Yep.
That makes a guest realize, I'm here because I'm actually important to you.
Oh.
And if you can get that feeling, that's great. On weddings, when you can combine cultures, when you have one or the other of the couple that has, whatever their background is, if you play music from that area, if you bring in a recipe from one of the couple's great-grandmother that you taught your chef to make, and on the menu it says great-grandma Josie's whatever dish it is, things like that, when people know there was thought put into, again, the five senses, the things you're listening to, the things you're tasting, the things you're touching, the textures, all of that, if all of that is meaningful, it's not just a room filled with more roses than you could ever deal with.
First impressions matter at special events. From opening a beautiful invitation to a fast and friendly check-in at the door, everything your guests experience makes a difference. Skipster is the event software that is built for creating first impressions that last. Visit their website at zkipster.com to try it out. That's zkipster, Skipster, to try it out.
So when you're talking to a client the way you're talking to me, how much time is the designing of the event and how much time is the educating them as to what makes a great experience?
It depends on the client.
Yeah.
Some people get it right away. Some people never get it. So every meeting that we take with a client, we are going back and forth on all of these things. If a client pulls, because we do ask them to pull things on Pinterest, and we say to them, don't just give me a pile of pictures, give me a why. So on Pinterest, when you can change the words underneath the pictures, tell me why you changed those words and what you liked about that picture so that we can start to understand who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me what your favorite food was growing up. Tell me what your favorite experience was as a child. Tell me the best event you ever went to and what you liked about it. Tell me why you picked that as your first dance song. All of those things are going to start to give us a clue as to who the person is, and then you've got something.
And how much time does it take you're really doing hardcore research. You know these people better than they know themselves, probably.
We know these people really well. So I was about to tell you, we did a birthday party 3 years ago in Budapest for a client's birthday. And I had done, this was going to be my third birthday that ended in a 0. So I had done starting our third decade of birthdays. And I met with his wife, and she said, he's about to have a birthday. I think we're going to do a big backyard barbecue. And I said, why? And she said, well, because we want to invite the office. We want to do this. We want to do that. And I said, I was thinking something different. And she said, okay. And I said, when we did one party for him before, we literally built a set with part of his hometown in Budapest. And I watched him take every guest through there and point things out and say, this was this, and this was meaningful to me, and this is why I did this, and this is why I did that. She said, yeah, he loved that. I said, so let's not do this as a big party. Let's take a small group, and let's do it in Hungary. Because I know your husband. I can't imagine anything else would make him happier. And she looked at me, and she laughed, and she said, you're right. Let's do it. And it's the most incredible event I've ever done.
Really? What else about it?
Because it was all about him.
Uh-huh. And how much research did you have to do on curating something like that?
I'm sorry, how much research did I have to do on
you had to curate this experience for the people that attended, so I'm sure he was involved in it.
And we did.
But you had to execute.
We did. It was a year of planning. We went there, 4 or 5 times. And it was extraordinary to the point of when it was over, Paige and I looked at each other and said, we may as well quit because we're never going to have an event like that again.
And what was the moment that you looked at each other and said, we did it? We got it.
So there was a small airport in Budapest that used to be their old airport that he used to go to as a child. And he actually escaped right after the revolution when he was 12 years old. And he used to go to this airport and stand on the field and see the planes coming and going. He would ride his bike there and think, I don't know where those planes are going, but I know it's someplace better. And this airport is now dilapidated. I don't think anything's happened to it since the 1950s. And we called the owner of the airport to try and do a lunch there. And they were talking about us like, why do you want to do a lunch here? This building's falling down. And when all of his friends were sitting in this space and his wife started to talk and welcome everybody, she started crying.
Wow.
And then everybody else in the room started crying. And we looked at each other and went, we did it.
We did it. Wow. Wow. So, it's interesting what you're saying, though, as advice to people that are listening that are in the event industry. You just basically did an ad for lifetime value of a customer.
Yeah.
That seems to be what's so great about this industry too, is that you're the sweep of time, that you're never really doing an event for a one-time event anymore.
No. Look, we're very fortunate that we have a lot of legacy clients, and we have several families that we're now starting on our third generation where we do events for the grandparents, the parents, and now the children are getting old enough to do their own events. And it's amazing because you do know everybody. And I always tell people on a first meeting, our first event with you is going to be great. Our 15th event with you is going to be extraordinary.
And what is that 15th event discussion like? I mean, you're giving them, like you did with this Budapest thing, you're looking at them more like you'll know more what they want than they want.
That's exactly right. And they start to learn that.
Yeah. Yeah.
They start to learn that. And this is going to sound strange, but when you do event after event for a family, your meetings get shorter and shorter.
Oh, yeah. It makes sense. You can read their minds.
Yeah. You can read their minds. You know them. You know what they want.
What happens, though, let me ask you, in terms of they'll probably always come and say that you have to outdo what you did last time. How do you do that?
It's, in my mind, outdoing something doesn't mean that it's more flowers or more caviar.
Right, right.
It just means you're doing something different. You're not giving them Groundhog Day. You're not giving them the same event over and over again.
And does that, it seems like the feeling afterwards, like you're at the end of the event, people love when they can say they host a great event, but they feel something differently. What do they feel after you have this long relationship and the event is over and you're saying goodbye to them? Like, what does that feel like?
Just feels like saying goodbye to an old friend.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. But it really is a deep relationship.
As opposed to when we do one-offs, it's funny. When you do a one-off event, you will talk to this person literally almost daily, certainly weekly for a year. And then you'll get an email or a text afterwards saying, thank you so much, that was incredible, and you never talk to them again.
Yep.
Which feels strange to me. When it's somebody that you get to know and a relationship that you have the opportunity to develop, that's everything.
It's also, this is kind of my thing, I believe, that the idea, it's not about the host, though, it's about all the things that happen between the guests. New businesses, new romances, new lives, new ways of thinking, because people are so open to talk to each other when the environment is so incredibly nurturing.
Yes, and it's funny that you say that, because I always say that our job is to create the best environment to open people up. Mm-hmm. And part of what we do, and I don't know if you know Paige, who has been working with me for 11 years, who is extraordinary, but one of the things that she does that I believe helps drive our business and makes people open up and makes people feel good is because she manages our guest list. Mm-hmm. She knows everything about these people. So if she's standing at the seating card table and you come up and or somebody comes up and she'll say your last name and they say Jones, and she'll say, oh, Bob and Sue, how was your flight in from Minneapolis?
Mm-hmm. Those little details.
And they just look.
Yeah.
And she gets them to open up right away, and they're smiling and they're talking, and that's a huge source of business for us.
That's incredible. I mean, it's really about the little details. I mean, that's what we hear that all the time.
It's making the guests feel as important as the host.
Yep. That's incredible. So this is very interesting and very inspiring to hear you. And, I've heard you speak. I've heard you at Engage. I've heard you all over the place. You're an icon in our industry. Whether you like it or not, you are.
Did you just call me old?
Well, I'm old. You're an icon.
There are no young icons.
Well, actually, maybe not. But I don't mind being older. I don't think I'd want to go through it again. But
nor would I.
No, absolutely. How do you view you work out of LA?
I do.
Is LA different than New York, than San Francisco, or are people everywhere? I want to dig into that a little bit.
That's not such an easy question to answer.
Okay.
Events in LA are a little different than any place else I've ever worked because we have the film industry here. So in Los Angeles, if you can dream it, you can build it in about 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. I think that culturally, people are different everywhere. I think San Francisco people are much, much different than LA people. But when you get to the root of it, and we were talking about getting people to sort of open up and take down their barriers,
right.
When you're able to take down their barriers, people are people.
Right.
No matter where you are.
To pull off the facade.
Yes.
That's interesting. So let's just end on, just mention some names, and I want to know what your first impression is of certain things. And I want to, and the first one would be when I say the word wedding. What comes to mind when you hear the word wedding?
My God, my brain just blew up. There is no first thing.
Okay.
I would hope that when you think of a wedding, you think of joy.
Okay. So you got there. That's good.
And just that true joy. And I'm actually producing my niece's wedding this weekend, and I hope that one is going to be pure joy. I think that, unfortunately, a lot of couples, they forget the why and they only remember the what. Mm-hmm. And the why is the joy. And I guess in everything I'm saying, it comes down to that. We try to design and produce more in the why than the what.
Mm-hmm. If I say the word wedding planner or event producer, what comes to mind?
Crazy people who just want to get things done.
Yeah. If I say Los Angeles? What's your first impression that people should have of Los Angeles?
Los Angeles is over the top.
Over the top. Okay, the last one.
Over the top.
The last one is, when I say the word Debbie Geller, what's your first impression of you?
Of me?
Yeah.
I would hope that other people's first impressions of me are that I'm a kind person.
That is the best possible way to end. Debbie, tell us how people can get in touch with you and see your great work.
Yes, they can get in touch with us. Our office number is 310-479-9000. At email is generally better because we're always out running around doing things, which you can use either info@gellerevents.com, and it's GELLER, events with an S.com, or you can go directly to myself, Debbie, DEBBIE, at gellerevents.com, or Paige, PAIGE, at gellerevents.com.
Great. Thank you so much.
David, thanks for that conversation. There was some pretty good advice here. Like, if we've seen it before at an event, it's not going to wow anyone at our next event. And also, guests need to be woken up after a meal with a wow. I wish everybody did that at their events.
Yeah, that's one of those moments people don't really activate, I guess is the right word.
Exactly. But you sometimes feel, if you've been sitting in your chair for a while, if you've been listening to a lot of speeches, that's a prime moment to wake up your audience.
Yeah, this I believe today's talk was kind of a masterclass for event organizers, and I encourage everyone to re-listen to these things and take notes.
Well, what did you think about her distinction between a sequence of events versus a schedule of events?
I think that she really knows that it's not about planning, it's about feeling it. It's about feeling when things should happen, and sequencing is a lot better than timing.
Yeah, the jury, though, is still out, I feel, on social media and hashtags.
Oh, yeah.
Because they serve a purpose. They collate posts, they generate momentum, and something could perhaps become viral. And for corporate, it is an essential part of ROI. It actually is a data piece that they can present to a client. Not so much for social events where you may want to keep a lower profile, or those kind of things don't matter. Those metrics don't matter in terms of an event's success. So I think this is still an unanswered question.
Yes, I totally agree with you on that. However, I think that, the whole purpose of technology is to make what was complex trivial. And at some point, people are going to figure out how to automatically create the way that people can find things automatically, so they don't have to sit there and put in hashtags.
Mm-hmm. Well, there are tech companies that are working on that, like using geofencing and other sorts of things like that. But it's not perfect at this point.
Not perfect at all.
So,
but nothing is.
So we'll see.
So, Beth, what is going on at BizBash?
We just released our list of Chicago's top 100 events, and we have new number ones in multiple categories, as well as new events that have been added to this list and others that have been dropped. One of the new ones is the James Beard Awards. They officially moved to the Chicago list after they committed to stay in Chicago through 2021. At first, no one was so sure how long they would be away from New York, so we hesitated about making it a permanent feature. But with this event and with others, it really goes to show how Chicago is aggressively trying to attract events as well as build its own. So this is a fun list, and you can find it at bizbash.com.
Yeah, I was actually in the car driving with Susan Ungaro when Rahm Emanuel tried to convince her to do it for the first time. Yes, they are aggressive, and Rahm is very aggressive, but got him to do it.
So yes, it's really interesting, and we'll see what happens as Chicago has new leadership with Rahm Emanuel leaving the mayor's office. But perhaps he has put something in motion that will continue.
Yep, I believe that all those mayors from Chicago leave a legacy no matter what.
True enough.
So before we end, we always like to thank the people that made this show possible from a technical perspective. We have Claire Hoffman, who is our editor, who writes all of the copy for the podcast, and also Rebecca Pappas, who gets it out to distribution places, and last but not least, Dave Nelson, our producer. So thank you, guys. And what do we say now, Beth? Until next time?
Gather on.
Gather on, Beth.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. We can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Player FM, Google Play, and Pocket Cast. Be sure to leave us a rating and review. It helps others discover the GatherGeeks podcast. We'd also love to hear from you. You can leave feedback on Twitter at GatherGeeks or leave us an email, gathergeeks@bizbash.com. We hope you'll join us again for the next episode of GatherGeeks. Until then, gather on.
So when's the big event? Hilton's here for planners with their exclusive customized meetings. Become a wow maker and save time by letting Hilton help you present an extraordinary event, one that leads to memorable and meaningful connections. Visit meetings.hilton.com and let Hilton help you.